revolutions of the 20th century changed the world of wine as we know it. Louis Pasteur's study of yeast cells meant that fermentation was no longer a mystery, but rather a process that could be controlled to some extent. The discovery of refrigeration led to an emergence of a new wine industry in warmer climates. Inspired by traditions set by the old world and powered by science and innovation, the new world of wine was formed. I'd like to welcome you from all of us here at Shore Academy. Here at Shore, we strive to help you reach your goals and dreams today. Welcome to your first lesson of your final module. We are about to kick off our world tour, but we need to do some groundwork before we take off. Today in Lesson 1, we will learn about Old World wine and New World wine. My name is Julia Blaine. I'm a qualified winemaker with nearly a decade's experience in the wine industry, both locally and internationally. And it is my job to teach you all I know about the wonderful world of wine. By the end of today's lesson, you'll be able to define Old World countries and list examples. You'll be able to describe a classic wine example from each Old World wine country and be able to define New World wine countries and list examples of these countries. And lastly, you'll be able to describe a classic wine example from each New World wine country. So let's kick off today's lesson with Old World wine. So you might be wondering, what exactly is Old World wine? Old World wine regions include Europe and the Mediterranean. Generally speaking, Old World wine practices rely mostly on tradition, geography, and terroir. Old World winemaking techniques paved the way for winemaking in the New World, including grape varieties, winemaking techniques, and philosophies. The Old World is where it all began and has had a global influence and impact on what has made the industry what it is today. Wines made in the Old World are normally heavily regulated by regional guidelines and rules that all wine producers must follow. This can include rules on which grape varieties are allowed to be planted and cultivated in the region, how many liters you're allowed to press from your grapes, and how the wines need to be labeled, and even the general style of the wine. Wines made in the Old World style tend to fit the following profile. They have a high acidity, subtle fruit, low alcohol, and are light to medium bodied. This profile is a generalization and not a rule, as there are many exceptions to this profile. Tradition is the golden thread that runs through both viticultural practices and winemaking techniques in the Old World. In many smaller vineyards and cellars, you'll often find that winemaking and wine grape cultivation has been a tradition that has passed through the family for generations, and that the same practices are in place today that was put in place by the forefathers. You often see this in wine regions in France, like in the Rhone Valley or Burgundy. This is despite the fact that most winemakers today have got some form of winemaking qualification. They will still not change the traditional ways of the family. Some winemakers will only do certain manipulations to the wine, like racking or bottling, when the moon is in a certain phase. Many Old World winemakers follow biodynamic farming and winemaking practices, especially in France. You will have received the course outline in your starter packs, so make sure you reference them as you go. I'll be keeping an eye on each of your practical skills that you are developing and demonstrate how you are building them up with each lesson and each module. Remember that this course is a 16-week course, which consists of 4 modules. Module 1 being basic, Module 2 is intermediate, Module 3, which you've just completed, is advanced, and Module 4, which you've started today, is proficient. Upon completion of this module, you will receive your professional diploma in wine appreciation. Well done, and keep up the brilliant work. Biodynamic viticulture is an ideological approach to viticulture. Rudolf Steiner, an Austrian scientist and philosopher, was the founder of the biodynamic approach to agriculture as a whole, which includes viticulture. The emphasis of biodynamic viticulture is on restoring soil fertility and includes elements of astronomy. All vineyard and cellar practices are governed by the position of the planets and the phases of the moon. All chemicals are forbidden, as well as fertilizers. Plant extracts and other specific preparations are commonly used, like chamomile, yarrow, and oak, and are applied as diluted sprays to the vineyard. Biodynamic viticulture is viewed as holistic viticulture and exists on the premise that everything in the universe is connected and gives off an energy that interacts with and influences each other. This includes the moon, the planets, and the stars. The goal of biodynamic viticulture is to see the vine as a part of the universe and create a balance between the vine, the moon, the planets, and the stars. Did you know that biodynamic wine is made in the vineyard? And there is a special biodynamic calendar that governs the timing of all viticultural practices. This calendar was created by Maria Thun, a German woman who dedicated her life to Steiner's work and biodynamic farming. In the biodynamic calendar, we get 4 types of days. There are root days, which are good for working with the vine canes, so applying practices like pruning. We get fruit days, which are good days for harvesting grapes. We get flower days, where we don't do anything to the vine, and then leaf days are good for irrigating the vineyard. In the cellar, the winemaking practices are quite straightforward. All chemicals and commercial products like commercial yeasts or artificial nutrients are prohibited. Sulfur dioxide is allowed, but capped at 100 ppm, which is lower than commercial wines in the United States, which are capped at 350 ppm, although wines rarely contain this much sulfur dioxide. If you are wanting to try a biodynamic wine, look out for a certification symbol like that of Biodiven. Have you ever opened a bottle of wine, tasted it, and thought to yourself, "This is the best wine I've ever tasted," only to be disappointed when you taste it again at a special occasion or with your wine club, and the wine is just dull and flat? Well, you might have been tasting it on the wrong day on the biodynamic calendar. People have started using the biodynamic lunar calendar to determine when to taste wine, and have noticed that wine actually tastes at its best on a fruit day. Let us dive deeper into what these 4 groups of days mean for tasting wine. Root days coincide with the earth element, and on the calendar will be any day that the moon is in an earth sign. Astrological earth signs include Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn. Root days are not good days for tasting wine, but are really good days to prune the vineyard. Fruit days coincide with the fire element, and on the calendar will be any day that the moon is in a fire sign. Astrological fire signs include Aries, Sagittarius, and Leo. Fruit days are the best days for tasting wine, as well as harvesting grapes. Flower days coincide with the air element, and on the calendar will be any day that the moon is in an air sign. Astrological air signs include Aquarius, Gemini, and Libra. On flower days, think of flower power. On these days, aromatic wines tend to shine, so go ahead and open that bottle of Riesling or Viognier. Leaf days coincide with the water element, and on the biodynamic calendar will be any day that the moon is in a water sign. Astrological water signs include Scorpio, Cancer, and Pisces. On leaf days, it is believed that the vine produces chlorophyll, so there is no focus on fruit at all, and this would not be a good day for tasting wine. Coming up next, it's the moment we've all been waiting for. Pack your proverbial bags and get ready for a trip to France. We will learn about 3 major wine regions in France, what defines them, and all about their wines. Terroir, we know, is a term that encapsulates all of the natural elements that impact the grapevine and thereby the resultant wine. In simple terms, terroir consists of soil properties, topography, and macroclimate, as well as the manner in which these elements impact the mesoclimate and grapevine microclimate. The combination of these natural elements will shape and form the grapes, which are the building blocks and primary elements of the wine. Old world wine regions combine tradition that has formed over generations to make wines that express their unique terroir. The old world shaped the new world, and the new world took this inspiration, knowledge, and passion and furthered their curiosity, branching off into their own. Countries that we're going to learn about in this module that form part of the greats that paved the way to the industry we know today include Spain, Italy, France, Portugal, and Germany. We're going to dive deeper into the specifics of each country as we progress through this module. So for now, let me just briefly introduce the old world of wine. Morpheus is our resident AI chatbot, and he will assist you with any questions you have during the lessons. If you are attending the live lesson as opposed to a recording, you will also be able to chat with your fellow classmates. If you receive any strange responses, please let us know at support@shoreacademy.com. Summary notes are available for purchase if you want the summary of what has been covered in your lessons. Download them and use them at any time. I'd also like to take this opportunity to remind you that completing your lesson quizzes will really help you understand the content better. And if you have very specific questions about a lesson, you're welcome to reach out to me. Please email support@shoreacademy.com and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Spain is the country with the most area of land under vine, but is only the third largest wine producer in the world, and an underrated one at that. The reason why they're only the third largest is because the vines are exposed to extreme heat and water stress, meaning that the yields are very low. Spanish wines are top quality and a fraction of the price of those from France and Italy. There are 77 known grape varieties that are indigenous to Spain and 69 official wine regions. The grape varieties that grow in Spain include Viura, Verdejo, and Albarino. And on the red side, we've got Tempranillo, Garnacha, and Monastrell. A classic example of a Spanish wine is a young Garnacha. This is known as Grenache Noir or just Grenache in France, but the grape variety is originally from Spain. This style is well known in the northern part of Spain, fresh, light-bodied and smooth with loads of red fruit like strawberries. Did you know that sherry is unique to Spain? Italy has got the richest diversity of distinctive terroir, variety in wine style, and indigenous grape varieties or cultivars. In fact, there are around 500 of them. So it would take you more than 20 years to taste all the wines of Italy if you tasted a new wine every week. Northern Italy is known for producing top quality wines. What makes Italy unique is its geography, with such diversity in topography, slope, altitude, and soil type. There are so many unique pockets of golden terroir that create distinctive wines. When one thinks of Italian wine, Sangiovese automatically comes to mind. This is Italy's most popular red grape variety and forms the foundation of the classic red blend from Tuscany called Chianti. Sangiovese is a grape that is a natural expresser of terroir, so the personality and style of Sangiovese in Italy will change depending on where the grapes are growing. A typical Sangiovese is dry, medium to full-bodied, with medium tannins and acidity. Flavor and aroma profile includes red fruits like cherries, as well as savory notes like tomato and oregano. Did you know that the colonizing Greeks called Italy Unotria, which translates to the land of wine or staked vines? France is synonymous with wine. The French paved the way for winemaking and quality and is known as the international benchmark of wine. France has got such a diverse terroir with variation in climate and soil, which means there is a region for virtually any type of grape variety. And the French can produce wines in virtually any style, from bone-dry, crisp champagne to full-bodied and rich Bordeaux blends. The French are known for many grape varieties and classic wines, but most notably would probably be Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and Cabernet Sauvignon. These grape varieties are so popular, in fact, that they are often referred to as the international grape varieties. A classic Bordeaux blend is a red blend of which the basis is either Cabernet Sauvignon or Merlot. The rest of the blend is comprised of the other red grape varieties that are grown in Bordeaux. These include Cabernet Franc, Malbec, and Petit Verdot. A classic Bordeaux blend will display primary notes of black fruit, including black cherry and currant. These wines are dry, full-bodied, and really pack a punch in terms of tannins. For this reason, they have an impeccable aging potential. The top 3 global wine producers are France, Italy, and Spain. Portugal is the home of port as well as Madeira wine. Today, they are quickly building their reputation for incredible value-for-money table wines. The development of tradition and wine culture in Portugal was quite an isolated one, and for that reason, there are many indigenous grape varieties that grow there and nowhere else in the world. In fact, there are more than 250. So much of what Portugal has to offer still needs to be tasted and explored. The wines of Portugal are mainly port and Madeira. Portugal is also known for the super fresh and smashable white wine Vinho Verde and great value for money dry red wines. Vinho Verde is a light and crisp summer white wine that hits the spot on a hot summer's day. Not only is the wine refreshing, but it normally has a really low alcohol, around 9 to 10% alcohol by volume. On top of this, they also have a very light fizz to them, which kind of makes you feel like you're enjoying some lemonade. Vinho Verde is normally a blend of white grapes and have flavors and aromas of melon, lime, and gooseberry. Did you know that besides the gift of port, Portugal is the world's most important source of cork? Germany is known for wines that are absolutely refreshing. Many of the vines in Germany are planted on land that can otherwise not support agriculture because they are so far north. And yet they manage to create white wines that are so elegant with a racy acidity that cannot be replicated anywhere else in the world. The Germans have mastered the balancing act of sugar and acidity and produce white wines with freshness, balance, vibrance, and perfume. Riesling is the great grape of Germany and has the ability to express terroir very well. This means that it can produce a wide range of wines depending on where it's grown. In Germany, Riesling makes great botrytized wines as well as bone-dry or semi-sweet wines. Dry German Rieslings are very expressive, perfumed, and have a racy acidity. Expect notes of jasmine, honeycomb, lime, and in some cases, even petroleum. The classic wines of Germany are sweet, but since the 1980s, sweet wine became unfashionable, and Germany started producing more dry wines. In fact, in 2010, 64% of Germany's total wine production was trocken. Now that we have familiarized ourselves with the old world of wine, allow me to introduce the new world of wine. So the term New World wine can be kind of confusing. New World wine regions were established by colonies from Europe or Old World wine regions, some as early as the 4th century and some as recent as the 19th century, like New Zealand. Many New World wine regions are in fact very old, which is why this title can be confusing. For example, the Dutch settlement in South Africa began in 1652, and the first vines were planted there in 1655. And even earlier than that, vines were planted in Mexico and Japan by 1530. So the term New World only refers to the spread of winemaking techniques. The wines of the New World have a style that is uniquely their own. Many of the New World wines focus more on varietal expression than terroir, and normally the words New World are synonymous with fruit-driven wines. This, however, is a generalization, as there are many world-class wine producers from the New World wine regions making wines that intentionally express their geography and terroir. One of the main differences between Old World and New World wine producers is that New World wine regions are free to make wine according to what the market demands. They are not as limited to rules and regulations like Old World regions. For example, if Chardonnay is suddenly fashionable, a viticulturalist could easily rip up their Sauvignon Blanc vines and replace it with Chardonnay. This would never happen in Bordeaux, where Old World wine producers are guided by nature and tradition. New World wine producers embrace science and technology. As soon as the grapes are harvested, man intervenes, using technology like mechanical picking, refrigeration, and using science to protect against oxidation. Cellar hygiene is of the utmost importance, and staff often wear rubber gloves and boots in the cellar. When it comes to winemaking, many interventions take place, including commercial yeast, artificial nutrients, and many other additives. Most New World wine producers are considered warm climate. There are, of course, always exceptions to this generalization. Before the discovery of refrigeration, the only regions in the world that could produce aromatic white wines with finesse were the regions of Northern Europe. Refrigeration opened the possibilities of planting new grape varietals in warm climates of the New World, like Chardonnay in California and Riesling in Australia. Typically, wines from the New World have the following characteristic traits: lower acidity, fuller bodied, higher alcohol, and very fruit forward. Countries that we are going to learn about in this module from the New World are those that are the leaders in innovation in the industry and produce world-class wines that have been inspired by the legends that paved the way. These countries include America, Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa. We're going to dive deeper into the specifics of each country as we progress through this module. So for now, allow me to introduce the New World of wine. The wines of North America are not only limited to the famous West Coast regions of California and Oregon. There are many scattered wine regions across the US that are up and coming. When the Europeans arrived in North America, they were surprised to see rampant grapevines all over. Failed attempts to establish Vitis vinifera vines over the next 300 years would lead to frustration, and no one knew that the American soils were riddled with one of the most deadliest pests to impact the wine industry worldwide, phylloxera. The fact that the Native American vines developed resistance to this pest would lead to the development that most of the world's vines today are grafted on resistant rootstocks. California produces 90% of the wine in the United States, so naturally when we think of wine in the USA, our minds go there first. Chardonnay is one of the world's most adaptable grapes and is planted almost everywhere in the world. Stereotypically, Californian Chardonnay is known for being heavily oaked with strong notes of butter and vanilla from American oak. These oaked Chardonnays are medium to full-bodied, creamy on the palate, with notes of butter, vanilla, butterscotch, and tropical fruit. Did you know that the USA is hands down the largest global importer of wine and is the fourth largest producer of wine? Grape growing and winemaking activities in Australia are scattered all across the island. Most Australian wine producers will purchase grapes from grape growers all around the country. Without refrigeration, there might not be a wine industry in Australia today. Australians can establish a vineyard anywhere they want to, the availability of water being the only limiting factor. The array of climates and soil types around Australia results in wines that truly reflect the region's distinct terroir, making the wines of Australia a unique experience. Common white grape varieties that you'll find in Australia include Riesling, Chardonnay, Semillon, and Sauvignon Blanc. The red grape varieties include Cabernet Sauvignon, Pinot Noir, Grenache, and Shiraz. Australian Shiraz. Shiraz and Syrah are the same type of grape, but the Australian version is so unique it's called by its own name. In a nutshell, New World warm climate Syrah is often called Shiraz. These wines are full-bodied, high in alcohol, and are incredibly fruit-forward. Expect loads of aromas and flavors of dark fruit like cherries and blackcurrant, as well as notes of cherry tobacco and spice. Did you know that the Australian Wine Research Institute is one of the most prestigious and admired wine academies in the world? New Zealand wine in a nutshell are wines with a crystalline fruit purity and racy, bright acidity in both their reds and their whites. These traits are what make New Zealand quite unique among the New World wine producers, as they manage to display a varietal fruit character that is typical of the New World, but retain the natural acidity like the wines in Northern Europe. New Zealand is globally known for making world-class Sauvignon Blanc. Depending on where the grapes are grown, New Zealand's Sauvignon Blanc can display notes of lime, passion fruit, gooseberry, and pineapple, along with herbaceous notes of lemongrass. These wines are also known to have very distinctive pyrazines, like freshly cut grass, green bell pepper, and jalapeno. New Zealand only produces 1% of the world's wine and is known as the Sauvignon Blanc capital of the world. The first Sauvignon Blanc vines were only planted there in the 1970s. Wine has been made in the Cape of Good Hope in South Africa since the 17th century, and since then the country has undergone huge transformations. Today, South African wine production is focused on improving plant material, planting grapes according to suitable terroir, preserving old vines and unique sites. In winemaking, the focus is on producing unique, world-class wine. South Africa is mainly known for two grape varieties or cultivars, namely Chenin Blanc and Pinotage. Chenin Blanc is the most popular grape variety in South Africa and is locally known as Steen. Most of these grapes were cultivated for brandy production back in the day, but today South African Chenin is a top quality white wine. Another word that is synonymous with South Africa is Pinotage. In 1925, Professor Perrault crossed Pinot Noir and Cinsault to create a clone that would be better suited to the hot South African climate. The idea was for the wine to taste like Pinot Noir and grow as well as Cinsault. But the result was quite unexpected. A big, bold wine with an inky dark color and high tannins, quite the opposite of its parents. Chenin Blanc is such a versatile grape and can be used for distillation for brandy, sparkling wine production, or world-class white wine. Typically, Chenin wines have a naturally bright acidity that then evolves into a slightly creamy palate. These wines are light to medium bodied, medium in alcohol, and present flavors and aromas of apple, pear, chamomile, and honey. Pinotage is a full-bodied red wine with a high alcohol, normally around 15% alcohol by volume. These wines are typically dry with a relatively low acidity. Expect flavors and aromas of black fruits like cherry and blackberry. These wines tend to be quite meaty and are also known to display notes of coffee and chocolate. Did you know that the Vin de Constance, a sweet wine from the Constantia region of South Africa, was the most expensive wine in the 18th and 19th century and was highly favored by Napoleon Bonaparte? Old World wine and New World wine are umbrella terms, and remember, there are always exceptions within these definitions. The world of wine is forever evolving and changing, and with an increase in climate change, we are constantly finding ourselves needing to adapt. All wine came from the ancient times, where our beloved Vitis vinifera grapevine originated. The ancient world is in Eastern Europe and includes countries like Turkey, Armenia, Georgia, and Greece. Today, these wine regions still embrace their ancient heritage and tradition, along with new winemaking techniques from the New World to make an impact. For today's lesson challenge, I'd like you to try a classic Old World wine or a New World wine and decide for yourself if you agree with the general profiling of this wine. Is it really true that Old World wines have a specific style and that New World wines are always fruit forward? Conduct your own taste experiment. Remember to document your findings in your wine journal and share with us your experience on social media using the hashtag #SureWine. Let's take a look at the 5 main skills that you're developing in this course. Firstly, tasting, including wine tasting, palate development, and identification and evaluation of wine faults. Next, we are learning to navigate the wine bottle, careers and terminology in the wine industry, as well as the elements of wine service. In the viticulture and enology department, we have learnt about primary alcoholic fermentation, secondary alcoholic fermentation and wine maturation, as well as common viticultural practices. We've learned about principal wine styles, principal grape cultivars or varieties, and food and wine pairing. And lastly, in this module, we are studying the wines of the world, including Old World wines, New World wines, and innovation in the wine industry. This is just the tip of the iceberg, as in wine, one never stops learning. And in anything, but especially wine, I truly believe you learn best by doing. So keep on tasting and documenting your journey. Thank you for joining me for today's lesson. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you soon for the first leg of our world tour in lesson 2.